you know what, but the thing that gives me most comfort and strength is to again reconnect to those groups that I'm active personally with, that are having all these really hard conversations. How can we keep on going with our struggles for peace and hope? I do want to encourage you to speak up and to let people know that, you know, that talking about all the Jews are thinking that and that, or all the Christians are like that, or all the Muslims are like that, is not legitimate. And to understand that there are different voices in our societies, and not all Muslims are Hamas people. No, they're not. Okay? And it's not moral to say that.
Well, good morning and a very big welcome on behalf of the Council of Christians and Jews, the UPJ and QJV, which is the two progressive Jewish movements that are supporting the visit of Rabbi Yael Vurgan. Without doubt, after October the 7th, certainly the Jewish community here and around the world has felt the full brunt of the increase in anti-Semitism around the world, and certainly Israelis and Israel will never be the same since the attack from Hamas. So there's a lot of discussion and a lot of debate as to what happens next. And I hope that during this discussion this morning we'll be able to touch on a number of those topics. And of course, we're gathered here to talk about how we're all feeling and how we see the future. I'd like to thank the Uniting Church here, and particularly the Reverend Dr. Julie Hall for their hosting. And I'd like to acknowledge the land on which we stand and pay our respects to the elders, past, present and developing.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip. So I'm here to represent the UPJ, the United Progressive Judaism, which I'm a board member there. And yeah, so let me introduce you to Rabbi Yael Vurgan. So Rabbi Yael Vurgan, a prominent figure in contemporary Reform Judaism, has a strong academic background, having earned a bachelor's degree in Jewish thought and Hebrew literature and an MA in Contemporary Judaism from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. She has managed programs and projects at esteemed institutions like the Van Leer Institute, Mendel Institute, and Advas Center for Equality and Social Justice. Vurgan has also made significant contributions within the Israeli Reform movement, particularly in the Center for Development of Community Social Action. She served as a student rabbi for Kehillat HaShachar in Even Yehuda. Ordained in 2018, she has been serving as a regional rabbi in the Shaar HaNegev Regional Council, overseeing spiritual matters in 10 kibbutzim near Gaza border. She has also actively participated in peace and coexistence initiatives and served as a former board member of Rabbis for Human Rights. As a proud mother of 2 boys, Vurgan resides in Modi'in, and her journey from a secular upbringing to becoming an ordained rabbi demonstrates her adaptability and dedication to her chosen path. In her own words, she characterizes herself as the happiest rabbi in the world until October 7th. She is now characterized as a pillar of spiritual solace and comfort to her community during this difficult time. So please welcome Rabbi Vurgan.
After that, I don't need to say anything else, right? That's enough? Thank you so much. Thank you. I really want to thank the UPJ for bringing me here. I'm really, really moved and honored to be here this morning. I'm in Australia for 10 days on behalf of the Israeli Reform Movement and the UPJ to tell you about what's going on in Israel. I do that from the angle of the work that I do with the people that I serve, and the reason I was chosen to come here is that the people I serve are living in those small border communities on the border of Gaza Strip. And so I think that I would like to start by presenting just a little bit of the special character of the area where I work with and the kind of awkward position, rabbinic position I have, which I told, as Vurgan said, I'm in love with, but it might look a little weird to you, the kind of rabbinic work that I do, but I'll show you how special it is and how moving it is. And we'll do that just a short presentation because I would really love for most of the time to be a conversation between us, because I'm sure you have all your thoughts and questions and ideas and feelings about the current events in Israel that affect deeply what happens here, especially in the area of connection between people from different cultures and religions. And so it's really important to me also to hear you and that we get to discuss our visions for these kind of relationships. And where is the future taking us? Where are we taking ourselves for a better future? But I want to really start with your permission, just describing the work that I used to do before October 7th, a little bit of what's happening after. It's really, really just, it's not the whole story, it's not with all the details. I'm sure you read papers and saw on Walsh TV and you saw some of the devastation that is taking place in the land that I come from. And so I want to share more of the spiritual angle of what's going on. And so I grew up very secular, in a secular family, nothing to do with religion also altogether. And when I grew up in Israel, as a secular Israeli regular family, I didn't know anything about progressive options to live as a Jew in Israel. I thought it's either strict Orthodox or a complete secular. And it took me many, many years to discover that there are many options in the wild world to express your religion identity. And so it's later on in my life that I found out about the Israeli Reform movement, and I connected to it. And it really was a big relief for me because I was involved in all these social justice and coexistence initiatives in Israel. And I also had this really long journey of a spiritual search because after growing up in a secular family, during my army service, I first time met religious people, and I was charmed by the spirituality they have in their lives, and I wanted that for myself as well. So I started this journey of spiritual search and learning a lot of Judaism. But at some point I felt that it's either I am a caring, humanitarian and universal, loving people and working for the values that I believe in, or a learned Jew that is involved with all this. So I felt that it was like two different separate worlds. And when I found the progressive movement, this is where I was convinced at the first time that I could really be both. So I started being a rabbi very late in my life, but I was really happy to find a framework in which I felt I could keep all of the sides of my personality together, because in the progressive Judaism you really do have a deep spiritual involvement and engagement in your culture and religion, together with and along with a very deep humanitarian commitment and human rights commitment and all of that. And really I think that the Israeli Reform movement have proved to be able to hold those both sides. And so, why am I saying, we used to say I was the happiest rabbi. When I was ordained about 5.5 years ago in the Israeli Reform movement in Jerusalem, I was asked what community I would like to serve. And I wanted something that is more of this classic form of a congregation, maybe like here and like in the synagogues I get to speak in. So it's a synagogue, or for you maybe a church-based, like a prayer place-based community, right? People come on a regular basis, same people that are members come all the time to this house of prayer and they pray together. And so I had in mind something like that. But then the Israeli movement suggested a different role, and I'll tell you the truth, at the beginning I didn't know what it means and I didn't want it, okay? Which means something completely different, being a regional rabbi. What does that mean? Is that I don't work in this one place, and there is no synagogue that is actually the one house of prayer that I work in. Rather, I'm like the wandering rabbi. I'm driving my car from this little community to another little community. It's in a country area in Israel where there aren't big cities. It's all these little like villages that are called kibbutz. I don't know if you ever heard that. It began when the Zionist movement has come to Israel, established these little villages that are also having communal life and sharing and a way of life that was special and unique for this kind of place. It's called kibbutz. And so they suggested I would go to a region like that has 10 kibbutzim. It's right on the border of Gaza, and it's called Shaar HaNegev, which in Hebrew means the gate to the Negev. Negev is the name of all more than half of the territory of Israel in the south of Israel. It's like a triangle, right? That is actually desert, okay, desert land mostly. So the gate to the Negev means that this area is just the beginning of that area. It's like where you enter the desert in the south part of Israel, okay? Get it? I'll show you a map in a minute. And so after reluctantly taking this role, a few months into the job, I already just fell in love in the area with the people and the special, unique characters of this area. And so I serve 10 little communities. The bigger one would be 900 people, the smallest are 400 or 500 people. It's a kibbutz. And they didn't sign up to be members of a congregation. So I'm more trying to reach out to them and suggest my services. And so you understand, you have in your mind the idea that it's not that they're coming to me. I don't sit in an office or in a synagogue and inviting people to come to my activities. Rather, I go from one place to another and try to make a lot of connections to have cooperation from inside these little communities to do work with them. And one more thing before I show you pictures of the area is that the residents of most of the kibbutzim in Israel are characterized to be very secular Israelis, okay? So they're Jewish, they live in a Jewish state, they don't feel like they need to go to services in order to feel Jewish because it's a Jewish state, so it's in the air all the time, and the Jewish calendar is dominating the time, and they learn about the holidays in school, and so they don't, and people living in a kibbutz, in this little communities I described to you, every kibbutz is a community, so even they have a very strong sense of community, they don't need me to create it for them. And then what happens is though that they get further and further detached from a more deeper dealing and understanding and thinking about their identity. It's kind of automatic, right? And so what I can suggest to them is a deeper connection to our tradition in a way that will feel right for them, not making them change their way of life, so values, but kind of merging with it, and I have to be very flexible and creative, so they won't reject it, because I don't know if you know that in Israel, the Orthodox and sometimes extreme Orthodox, is dominating so many parts of our lives that secular people really many times just reject everything that has to do with religion because they identify with them and they don't want that. So if we want, if I want the people to be able to connect happily, I have to bring content that, and also the way I bring it and the content itself, that will be not threatening and it will be appropriate for them, okay? So, Shaar HaNegev is the name of my congregation. By the way, the Israeli Reform movement started to send us progressive rabbis to all the ends of Israel after establishing big communities in the big cities, in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, in Haifa. We have communities more in the classical form of congregations. But about a decade ago, the Israeli progressive movement had decided to send rabbis like me, so there are 13 like me now, to all the ends of Israel. So the option of having progressive Jewish services will be available for people, for Israelis living not just in the center cities, but in all these periphery areas, country areas, small communities, okay? So I'm a part of something bigger. I'm telling you the story of my congregation, but you have to double that and imagine that it's happening in other places in Israel as well. Okay, so the logo of my community is on the top right of that screen, and it contains the words Kehilat Shaar HaNegev, the Shaar HaNegev community, and then it contains a symbol, an image of a red, small, fragile, gentle flower that in Hebrew is called kalanit. It's a very common flower and how do you say that? Like a natural flower that just comes out on the field. In English, I think it's called anemone. It's like a poppy seed, a little different.
It's like a poppy.
It's like a poppy, yeah. But I was taught the correct name, so it's anemone. And and why is that the symbol? Why is that the logo of my congregation? You ask yourselves. Good question. And now we're going to move on. And before I answer the question about the flower, I want to show you one other thing. And you can also see on the right side, above the congregation logo, you see the logo of the municipality. So I work on behalf of the Israeli Reform movement, but I work in a municipality that is giving services to all those 10 kibbutzim. And I work in cooperation with them. And so the logo of the municipality, what does it look like? I'm just teaching you the character of the area through those logos, okay? So it has a field, right? You see the green? There's a field, and then there's the kibbutz, the house, the blue houses on the background. That's the house of a kibbutz. And the people living in this area of Israel are still working the land, working in agriculture, bringing bread out of the land. And so we have a holiday in our Jewish calendar that is called Shavuot. That's the word that is written on the top of this sorry. And in the Bible, this holiday is described as a harvest celebration. Because it's always in the summer. We cut the wheat that we grew through the year. And that was the holiday. Later on, there are some other meanings that were put into this holiday. But the people living in this area, of course not all of them work in agriculture, but agriculture is one of the main characters. I'm sorry, I don't know what it is. I think I've been talking too much. People are really proud of their crops. They're really proud working in the fields of the kibbutz. And so, holiday of Shavuot, they don't go to synagogue for services, okay, like some maybe more religious people will do. But they have a celebration, you know, I'm asking myself, is that less religious, okay? Or at least less of a holiday, that they go to the field and they really celebrate the land and the fruit that the land is giving us, and the fact that we can work this land and get a living out of it. And so I'll show you the next picture. And so the whole kibbutz families with children, hundreds of people, they're going down to the fields of the wheat, and then they're actually demonstrating, you can move on, how these huge machines, they go and they cut the wheat in the field. And so it's really impressive. I grew up in cities all my life, and first started working in this agriculture country area, I went to see these celebrations. And you know what? Later on, I realized the way that I can contribute to this on a more spiritual level and bring some text and blessings and whatever. But, you know, I'm full of respect to this aspect that they're so proud of, and, you know, being so connected to where they live. This is why they're having such a hard time now, being away, being evacuated from their land. Because it's not like me, you know, if I have to move, I moved so many apartments already. It's not, I'm not that connected to that specific place. But for them, it's a real true love to the land, not in a fanatic way, just in a working way. You know, just being a part of the area, learning how to treat the land well, so we give them fruits. And they grow potatoes and carrots, and sometimes they give me a present after I officiate some kind of ceremony to take back home, like a bag of garlic or whatever they grow in the kibbutz, and it's really nice, and I respect that a lot, and I'm trying to always think how to connect to that in the content that I bring them. Now we move on to see, remember the red flower? Okay, so this is what this area looks like just 1 month a year in February after the rain and the beginning of the winter. We get rags of red flowers just in that specific area. And so this is why it became a symbol of the area. And I have to tell you that if we can just move on, I'll show one more thing before that. Yeah, just move on another one, like that. And people from all of Israel come to see that because it's really beautiful. And then another picture. I think I did I put the mayor's one? No, okay. So I'll show this map in a minute. The mayor of the region I'm working for was murdered on October 7th, early in the morning. He was going out of his house to join the civil defense group of the kibbutz to protect the kibbutz from hundreds of terrorists who came in. He lives in a kibbutz named Gaza. And he was one of the first people to be announced to be murdered that morning. But he started long ago this festival called the Red South, in which people come to see the flowers every February. Many events has to do with that. And so people always talk about how they have the good red, which is what you saw, and then there's the bad red, because the alarms when there were rocket attacks from Gaza would go like Tseva Adom, which means red color. That's how they know they have to go to run, actually. They have a few seconds to run to their safe rooms, either if they're at home. Each home in that area of the Gaza envelope has a safe room that is supposed to, it's concrete, supposed to protect them from rockets. And if you're outside, then you have to run to these outside little shelters that are scattered all around the paths in the kibbutz and also on the roads. You drive that area on the road, you keep seeing every junction they have this little concrete building which is actually a shelter. That if you're driving your car and there's Tseva Adom, like red color alarm, you need to stop your car immediately and run to one of these shelters. And so I'm telling you this because Adom red has become symbol of so many things, for the good and for the bad, and also the residents of this area love, although they've been suffering from security problems and attacks for 20 years already, and they got used to it, which is not good. But still, unbelievably, they would say, you know, if you meet them and you ask them how it is to live in Shaar HaNegev region, they would say, let me tell you, it's 95% heaven, okay? And then those 5% hell became so much more than 5% in the last 5 months. But I'm telling you this because to tell you that I learned to admire the people of the area for being so strong and so resilient and so brave and not giving up living there, not giving up loving the land. And you know what? Not even giving up visions for better relationship with the neighbors. And many of the residents in this area, for all the years I was working there, were talking about peace, singing about peace, praying for peace. Some of them even activists and organizations that are trying to promote peace with the neighbors. The mayor itself got murdered by Palestinians from Gaza, was promoting a vision of how to help the people of Gaza. planning all these kind of projects, like building this industrial park for the Gaza people to work within Israel. He was promoting missions of agriculture people from Gaza Strip coming to the kibbutzim to learn new things about how to work the land successfully in the area. And so it's such a pity on so many levels, but really many of the people who got murdered were really people who were seeking peace even before that. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, a little longer. I'm just showing you, I don't know if you can see well, it's kind of little and far, but still, if you have in your head the map of Israel, right, the Mediterranean Sea, the south part of the Mediterranean Sea, and the border we have with Egypt on the south, and in pink, that's the Gaza Strip, and then all the purple area, by the way, is where the terrorists managed to
infiltrate,
exactly. This is all the places they reach. You can see that they reach pretty far. The city of Ofakim on the far right end is quite far from the border. The kibbutzim I serve, the area I serve, is on the top left part of this purple area, next to another city called Sderot. And again, those are kibbutzim, some of them. You can't read the names from so far, but the ones, the black dots that you see that are closest to the border, these are the kibbutzim I serve, Nachal Oz, Kfar Aza, these are the names. Now, if we could move on, I will show you a picture I took from one of the kibbutzim. This is taken from Kibbutz Kfar Aza, looking towards the Gaza Strip, so you can just see the proximity. This is less than 1 kilometer from the fence from the border. And that's from inside the kibbutz, and this fence didn't hold. This is one of the gates that were broken. And now, switch, go back to what was before October 7th, what kind of work I do with them. So, just an example. Yeah, we can move back. Now, move on, yeah. Yeah, you were in the right place, exactly. So I'm just showing you an example. I can show you hundreds of pictures like that, okay? This is just one event that I was holding in one of the kibbutzim. It's a Kabbalat Shabbat. It's like the service we do at the beginning of our Shabbat. But it's not really a service, because it's not in the synagogue. It's out there on the grass in the kibbutz, and families come with the children. It was the beginning of the school year. And so we are actually, we have the Shabbat candles, and we have challah, and all the symbols of Shabbat, and we're greeting the kids that are going to first grade and starting to learn to read. And so we put them under this talit that we usually use, and I'm sure some of these kids have never seen one before, because they're not engaged in religious community life. But I bring it, and I explain about it, and it's like a chuppah of a talit being on top of their heads, and we're greeting them for starting to go to school and learn to read Aleph Bet. And it's a very moving event, and they get cookies in the shapes of Aleph Bet with honey on them, and then they get to eat it and lick it, and then the language and the Hebrew and the Aleph Bet is sweet like honey in their mouth, and we sing many different songs, and it's just lovely, event. And I would do it every week in a different kibbutz. So I see different people. I don't even know all of them, okay? But they come. I cooperate with someone from the kibbutz. We advertise it. The families that have kids going to the first grade are coming, and this is how I get them to know me. And then families who came to this event, not planning to be a part of any community, okay? They have their own community, but they see me there. And then, if God forbid, one of their parents would pass and they would need somebody to officiate a funeral, that they would turn to me. And so I want to be exposed as much as possible, and so they know they have this option to get Jewish progressive services from me in the area, which otherwise it wouldn't be accessible for them at all. And so I do many of these kind of events, just so they would enjoy it, of course, but not just for that, also that they will know that they can reach out for and they can get those services when they need them. And then we'll move on, thank you. And some other events that try to engage the whole family in celebrating our holidays, and so we blow this horn, shofar, in our high holidays. And so, of course, I'm doing that, but then I give all the kids a try too. It's really hard to blow this horn and make a sound out of it, but they love it. And I want the kids kids to be engaged with it. I want them to understand what is it all about, why using that and not a trumpet, and what it symbolizes in our tradition. And so it's beautiful, beautiful event. And this is the Megillah, the scroll. It's not a Torah scroll, it's a scroll we read on actual the holiday we're having now, Purim, with the story of the holiday. And the kids in those kibbutzim have probably never seen a real scroll like that. I bring it and we read it together, and I let them touch it. And the whole idea that it's accessible and that it's yours, and our tradition belongs to everyone, not just to the ultra-religious people. It belongs to all the people. And even if you're secular, you can connect to it, and you can read it, and you can celebrate it, and it's okay. And me growing up secular, you know, they trust me. I look like them, I sound like them, and they understand that it's really, I want the people of this very periphery, border communities in Israel to have the right to celebrate their tradition as well. Okay, what do we have next? I don't even remember. Oh, okay, I really wanted to reach that. Okay, another thing I started doing in the area, in the beginning, as I started working there, is interfaith activity. I joined the Interfaith Forum in the south of Israel. We have a few interfaith groups in Israel. Some work in the north where a lot of Christians and Muslims live. And also in the south of Israel, we do have, as you probably know, Muslims living in what's called Bedouin cities around just the area that I showed you. And not so many Christians, but there is a church in Beersheba, which is like the capital of the south of Israel. And so I joined a lovely, lovely interfaith group, and I started going to the meetings and knowing the people. And so when my partner in Kibbutz Kfar Aza, the one that got mostly severely attacked on the October 7th, but that's 2 years before, Louise, she's second from the left, she always does these activities with me. So she calls me before our holiday of Hanukkah and saying, what are we going to do for Hanukkah? What are you bringing us? I want to do something with the people, with the kibbutz. I said, you know what, let's do an interfaith candlelighting. And she freaked out. She never thought it's even a possibility, because this kind of, you have to understand, it's not so common for regular Israelis to actually meet people from other religions. So it sounded to her like a very exotic idea. And she said, how are you going to do that? Do you know people? I said, yes, I know people. I can bring Sheikh Hassan. He's from Rahat, the neighbor Bedouin city. And I'm in touch with many of the Muslim leaders of those cities. and Reverend Roman from the church in Beersheba. He's in the center. And then Hadir, she's a Muslim woman activist, social activist, well known in Israel. She's wonderful. She's very active in also women wage peace and all kind of movements that are co-movements for Arab and Jewish people in Israel, struggling for peace and for love and understanding between the different religions and groups in Israel. And so we came together to the members club. So again, since this synagogue, we do all the activities in the, or outside or in the member club of the kibbutz. And so many people came to that from all the area. We published it, and it was just a lovely event. We were, you can move to the next slide. We were lighting the Hanukkah candles together. And then each one of us was talking about, I did it a couple of years, so every time we pick a topic that has to do with the holidays. So it could be like, what's the light in your tradition? Or how does your religion relates to the idea of a miracle? Or it could be anything that we choose. The thing is that it gives my people, the audience, a chance to really be exposed to spirituality from other religions, which, you know, I know maybe for you have this beautiful council and maybe you do a lot of activities and people here live together. In Israel, the society, although we have non-Jews in Israel, right? It's a Jewish majority, but we have 25% of people in Israel not Jewish. Still, everything is so segregated. We have the mixed cities, but mostly people would live in neighborhoods that they just want to meet people just like them. And our village is an Arab village. Jews don't live there, okay? And a Jewish town is a Jewish town, and Arabs don't live there. So we never get to meet. And we never exposed to the beauty of the other traditions around us, and it's a pity. And so bringing that to this little community, you have no idea how moved people were, and approaching us after this talk saying, you know, we have never actually heard a spiritual leader of another religion talk. And these are all people, right? They had all their lives to do that, but they haven't. And so this kind of activity works so well in the area. And that's because most of the people living in those kibbutzim are really open to that, although they live in really closed communities, right? I don't know how it will work in other places, but I'm really proud to have this activity. And in a minute, I will show you something that is trying to be done by those forums these days, struggling in the new realities that we have. We can move on. I'm adding this in a minute. Oh, so I showed you pictures of children before, and they work with children. I do a lot of work with seniors as well. This is a group of seniors that I was holding. You know how we have a bar mitzvah, which is like the growing older. We do it on the age of 13 for boys and 12 for girls, which is a maturing ceremony. Like you become a part of the mature society. You're not a child anymore, something like that. And then the way our tradition is offering for us to celebrate it is by letting them read just a part of our story. They have to read from the Torah scroll in a very special way. It's demanding to study. It's a lot of preparation. So I got this group of seniors that never actually had the ceremony in their youth because of different reasons. And we decided to have a late, like saying it's never too late. You're allowed to do it from when you're 13 or 12 and on, whenever. So even if it's 70 years after, these are people mostly 80 and up. Okay, and so we had this lovely, lovely ceremony in the regional senior club. They have a regional senior club. All the seniors from the kibbutzim come there to have activity, and they do a lot of work with me because they really love this activity of studying and singing and celebrating together. So we had this wonderful celebration for these seniors to read from the Torah scroll and to be, to connect to their tradition. There was this event actually took place on October 3rd. Okay, so it was just, we were aiming towards the holiday that we were supposed to celebrate on October 7th, which is a holiday where we celebrate receiving the Torah tradition, receiving the book, the holy scroll. Okay, that was just a few days before, just the next one. Yeah, and I don't know if you know that we built this temporary structure called sukkah, which is a symbol to where the Jewish people were wandering in the desert and they didn't really have houses. And so the temporary building reminds us of this journey in the desert. And so we built this symbol of a temporary structure called sukkah, and we were, after the ceremony, taking this big, nice picture in the sukkah outside. And then October 7th happened, and after it happened, the people, and I'm not showing you deliberately, I'm not going now through all the devastation pictures of what happened in the kibbutzim. I'm sure you heard, I'm sure you know. 2 of my 10 kibbutzim got hundreds of terrorists walking inside the kibbutz, shooting people in their houses. People were closing themselves in those safe rooms that are supposed to protect you from rockets, not from shootings. And so you can't even lock the rooms from the inside. People were holding the handles of the door for hours. People were in the safe rooms for 20, 30 hours where barrels are going outside. A lot of people killed, a lot of people abducted. And so you know all that. But then, what do I do as a rabbi for these communities after this event? I wasn't even there physically, I don't live in the area. But, I was in contact with hundreds of people after the events, trying to find out what happened to them, to listen to their stories. They have horrible stories of their experience, and I needed to understand that, not being there physically. It's not even possible, I think, to really understand. If you were not locked in your safe room for 20 hours, hearing shooting out in your living room, you can't really understand the fear that people experience, but I was doing a lot of just spiritual consulting, meaning just a lot of listening and and supporting people through the first weeks of trying to even process and understand what they were going through. Just a lot of hugging and holding hands and looking at them and listening to them, many, many, many hours. People were evacuated from most of the kibbutzim. 2 or 3 that are further from the fence were not evacuated, but the ones that are like a few kilometers from the fence were all evacuated to other places in Israel. And so instead of going to meet them over there, I started going all over Israel, in the north, in the south, in the Tel Aviv, and everywhere. Wherever they were given hotels to stay, or other kibbutzim who were hosting them. And so I drove there and I was just meeting people and I was just talking to them. And then at some point we started redoing our kind of, not services, again, ceremonies. So what you see here is a picture of Kabbalat Shabbat, of our gathering for, greeting the beginning of Shabbat. And it's October 13th, so it's the first Friday after the event. I didn't even think they would want to do that. But I got a call from one of the kibbutzim that it's called Gavim, and it's now evacuated to another kibbutz in the north. And so it's still summer, we're sitting outside. Very, last minute organization, very informal as you see. Kids are running around playing, the parents are just sitting on the ground, some of them crying. We were all still shaking in the first week. It was all so shocking and so, but we're singing and singing some traditional songs of Shabbat and many Israeli classical songs. And now, I told you these people are secular, they don't really want services, but you know what, at that event and all the events coming after that, I felt that every song, even if it's just an Israeli song, had the quality and the feeling of a prayer. Because people really need, in times like this, the prayers and the words of whatever it is that we're singing together are giving them language to describe their feelings. I think when you're traumatized, one of the things that happens is that you're losing your words. You can't tell, you can't talk about it. And so, first of all, singing together is something that is very communal and is very strengthening for people. To sit together and sing together has a lot of power. You know that, okay? And in this case, it really felt like a prayer. Like the war was going on around us, that the helicopters in the sky right above us, and military planes and everything. And we were creating this bubble of comfort and of being together and of strengthening each other. And so I did that every Friday in different places with other communities, but I reached out to them all the time, and surprisingly they really wanted it. And then, after that we had started at the beginning, all the hostages issue was very, nobody had the information. Now we know all their names by heart. We are now 160 days into that war. And we have 134 hostages that are still in Gaza, all these 160 days, which is unbearable to just even think about it. And now, of course, we get the lists all the time running, and we know all the names. At the beginning, it was not organized yet. The government was doing nothing about it, and the families started organizing themselves. And so, I don't know if you know that, there's a big square in the center of Tel Aviv that is the museum square. And then the family forum of the hostages people, with a lot of support from the public, established the square, as it's called now, the hostages square. And so you can imagine that not just me, other rabbis of the progressive movement, we are coming there every Friday, every Saturday. We hold ceremonies there. It's outside. It's hundreds of people walking. It's very informal, but it's very powerful. It's very emotional. People just want to sing with us, no matter where they come from and what background they come from. And whatever thing we manage to organize, some kind of a paper or booklet, and we bring it and people just sing. And so I work a lot with the hostages family. We do a lot of ceremonies. Sometimes they ask me to say a prayer on the stage. Sometimes I don't even have to say anything. I just come there and I just stand there and support them. I brought this, I don't know if you can see it. May I ask, if it's not hard, if it's hard you can stay seated, but if you're willing to stand up for just a minute, so you can see this, and we can also acknowledge these dear people. Of course, it's not all of them. I'm going to take this and move a little bit. It's not all of the people, as I told you, we have 134, but these are the 7 hostages that are still in Gaza from my region. So from the 10 kibbutzim I work with, the whole South region is much larger, but these are the ones I know the best and their families. And so I carry the sign that the municipality have issued all the way here because I wanted you to also get to know these people and think about them and hold them in mind. It says, I couldn't find an English version, but it says, "Ze lo shalem biladehem," it's not whole without them. And really, the communities I serve, because they already lost so many people, they really feel that they can stand other losses and more losses, and they really need the first priority period to get these people back to the communities. As you can see from the 7 people, the 4 on the right are really young. They're young adults, they're 20-something. These are twin brothers of the Vurgan family from Kfar Aza. And this is Emily and this is Doron. And they're all from Kfar Aza kibbutz. This one kibbutz had 65 people killed out of a population of 900. And so we understand why we need them back. And then we have these 2 men from Nachal Oz, another kibbutz, and they are in their 40s. It's Tzachi and Omri, and they have children and they have families, and they're all waiting. And you know, a kibbutz is like a big family. It's you have your own family, and then the community is the larger family, and then all the area is even a bigger family. And so we go around in every demonstration. We protest with this sign of, you know, and people are just from all Israel come to support the families and to demand the government to reach a deal in which they can come home. I can't tell you how crucial this is for the recovery of my community. People tell me, and I believe them, we are not going to be able to heal from that trauma if we don't get these people back. And it's urgent. It's every day that passes is a danger to their lives. And I'm kind of begging everyone to do whatever they can and even just talk about it. Even just remember one name and pass it on and put pressure on whoever you can so we can get these people back. And, all right, this is another, we can move on. Yeah, and I'm showing you that, you know that this is a Torah scroll, and we got a donation of a Torah scroll to our community from the World Union for Progressive Judaism. And we decided to dedicate the scroll to the memory of all the heroes that were fighting against the terrorism in their kibbutzim. It's called the Civil Defense Group, and so we held a few ceremonies actually to celebrate the fact that we have received this very generous and moving gift to our community. You know, the Torah scroll in our tradition is described as being the tree of life, Etz Chaim. So bringing us a gift of life in such troubled times was something really meaningful. I didn't know how the people are going to react to that, but they actually were really moved. What you see here is the widowers and the mothers of those heroes, and the one on the right is the wife of the mayor that I just told you about before that was killed. They also lost one of their sons and her mother, so she's mourning double three. And it's a very center family in that kibbutz. And so I told all the women that while holding the scroll, they should tell us a few words about the hero that we're commemorating, and also what gives them energy and a feeling of the power of life. And you know, these women are so strong. I can't even believe how they're going on with their lives, but they said just beautiful things about their connection to the tradition and the way that it gives them hope and energy and strengthen them, and the way they want to pass it on to their children. And it was just a beautiful move. I'm trying to kind of give you the feeling of what it is to work with these people now, and just suggest whatever it is that I can suggest. You know, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not, a physician. I can't heal them on these levels, but what I can bring them is this connection that apparently is giving strength to a lot of them to feel this idea that they're part of something bigger. And also, I'm not sure the pictures here because I cut down the presentation, but many pictures of delegation groups coming from communities around the world to hear their stories, to listen to them, to get to know them and their communities. It's really moving for my people to know that people around the world care about them. They know, they understand the terrible disaster that they were going through and that they want to hear their story. So that's moving too. Is there one more? Yeah. And so, as I told you, the ceremony I get to officiate the most, except funerals, unfortunately, but this is the maturing ceremony of our tradition, which is called bar for a boy or bat for a girl mitzvah, which means they are beginning to join the adult community. And the way, like the test they have to go through in order to be accepted is to read a part of our story, which is in the Torah scroll. And so this girl had her grandmother being murdered on October 7th, but she still decided to have her bat mitzvah ceremony after all. It was like 3 months after. And I was so proud of her. And I was teaching her and we were preparing, and then she had the ceremony. For me, that was really a symbol for we're going back to life. And it's been such a hard first month after the event, and everybody was so broken. But I really believe in those people and how strong they are, and that they can go on with life, and that they can still celebrate. So let me tell you, this was half a memorial and half a happy event. All together, people were crying for different reasons. But it made me feel so hopeful that we're going to go on with the work that we're doing, and we're going to spiritually continue to support people in hard times and good times, and it's all mixed up right now, but I really believe in that. Every ceremony like that, we say prayer for the hostages. Every ceremony we say prayer for peace, and trying to hold on to that belief that people are going to be set free, and freedom for everybody in the area will come, and peace in that land will come. It's not easy for some people now to pray for these things, but I insist, and I think that it's really important that we hold on to our values and beliefs and hopes. And so this ceremony is a mix of mourning and hoping and praying all together. And then the last thing I'm going to show, then we're going to open it to talk a little bit. Remember the flower from the beginning, right? So now in the area, they have all these signs being hanged up saying, we will rebloom. Okay, so saying, yeah, you see here, they have the anemone bleeding. See? The flower is bleeding. But now we have all these signs in the area declaring we know that we're going to bloom again. The area, HaNegev, will be blooming again. And that's the encouragement that we give each other, to really believe that life can restore and rebuild and heal and recover. And that takes a lot of faith, and that takes a lot of community work. Because the rebuilding is not just the families that lost dear, it's the whole community holding each other, strengthening each other. And I want to share with you one more thing. It's not in a presentation. Thank you so much. You can leave this on. I want to show you one more thing because, as I told you, I became a member of one of the interfaith forums in Israel. And after this event, of course, there was a crisis, in all those forums, how to even start a conversation again after that. Some of the forums I'm involved with are not precisely interfaith, but more like a coexistence kind of groups with Jews and Arabs working together towards peace and understanding. And it was hard to start the conversation. People were so hurt on all sides and so emotional, and every word in the WhatsApp group got a meaning from here to Kathmandu, because everything is so loaded and everything is so emotional. So everything you say or don't say is going to be, interpreted. And so we were all really worried. But I can tell you that we kind of recovered from that first shock. And although it's not, unfortunately, it's not the majority in Israel that is involved in this. The majority, I think, unfortunately, is more driven by feelings of revenge and hatred and looking at the other with fear and with mistrust, okay? But this exists. I mean, I don't know even to tell you what percentage of people are involved in conversations with others and trying to together to still hold to that belief. But there are groups like that, and there are voices like that saying, let's stop fighting each other and let's try to end this bleeding, ever-going conflict and reach understanding and peace and talk to each other. And so I choose to be on those groups, and some of my congregants also. It's not everybody in Israel. There's a big, deep dispute right now among different groups in Israel. But this voice exists, and I want you to know about it. I want you to know we pay high prices. Those high prices that people speaking up against war are well documented. People are being arrested. People are being cancelled. People are being fired from their jobs for just speaking up for peace. It's really, really hard. But there are brave people who still do that, okay? And I want you to know, it's really important that you know that we haven't given up. And I'm also telling you, don't give up on us. Israel has to be a place, first of all, for all the Jewish people, but also a place of coexistence and of peace, because it has to be. And we won't be able to continue living there if we won't be. So I'm giving out this paper. And I want you to just see just one example of something that we've done lately. Ramadan month started. If you can give those out, please. It's Hebrew, Arabic, and English, okay? Because this is how it came out in the 3 languages. And this is religious leaders from all religions in Israel calling the government towards the beginning of the Ramadan month. The government had a plan that they would prevent Muslims from praying in the most sacred Al-Aqsa mosque. Just to kind of revenge them. I don't know why. But they had this awful plan of not allowing the Muslim people to have their Ramadan prayers, and so rewrote this appeal to the government, and it was cancelled. I mean, the rule that they wanted to make that Muslims are not allowed to go up to that mosque was indeed delayed, or completely cancelled, but it did have an effect. And so if one of you that reads English better than me would please agree to read this in front, can we read it out loud? Anyone is willing to read? Thank you. Just go to the microphone. Hold on. Yeah, you know what? Hold on, just stand here so they can also see you. Yeah, read the whole thing. It's not so.
An urgent call to the Israeli government. Freedom of religion is a fundamental right in the state of Israel. We, spiritual leaders of the Galilee, Jews, Christians, Druze and Muslims, call on the government of Israel to allow freedom of worship for all citizens of the country, including those of the Muslim faith who wish to exercise this right at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the most holy site in Israel-Palestine for Muslims during the month of Ramadan. The month of Ramadan is a time for fasting, prayer, charity, and being with family. We call for the protection of the rights of all believers to exercise their will and faith, especially at this sensitive time when we are all praying for peace, tranquility, and security in this country. It is the responsibility of the Israeli government and security forces to guarantee freedom of worship for Muslims at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, a right also enshrined in international agreements the State of Israel is obligated to uphold. In this very difficult time, every one of us, and in particular those who serve in public leadership roles, including elected officials and representatives, must work to keep the calm and reduce unnecessary friction. During the months of this unbearably long war, the vast majority of the country's citizens, Jews and Arabs alike, have maintained mutual respect and have acted with responsibility, humanity and kinship towards one another. Despite attempts by extremist elements, even in our own government, to foment unrest, we have managed on the grassroots level to prevent the war from spilling into our streets, neighborhoods and cities. The Muslim citizens of Israel are not enemies. We are all neighbors and partners. In the name of the spirit of Israeli unity, in the name of basic human values of respect and solidarity, of love your neighbor as yourself, a doctrine at the foundation of the faith of all religions, we demand that the government of Israel preserve freedom of religion for all citizens of the country and cancel any decision that infringes on the right of Muslims to pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque during the month of Ramadan.
I'm sure you agree. And it says the gallery, that's how it began, with a form in the gallery, but then it spread out to other forms in Israel. We all signed that, hundreds of spiritual leaders signed this appeal. And so there is hope, right? And we insist that we want these values to be leading us and not the ones we hear loudly in the press and so I'm kind of praying with you together that this voice will become louder and more present. And now I'm really open to hear your comments, your questions, your ideas, your beliefs, whatever you would like to share here. And don't worry, I'm willing to talk about everything. I want to hear you tell your name, please.
Martin Chatfield, I'm Catholic. Got a daughter in Israel, and one of her husband's cousins is Dror, who is one of the hostages from bereaved.
What's his name?
Dror. And his two children and their cousin were released in November. Now, I saw a YouTube the other day with one of the government spokesmen say that exactly this, all people have the right of religion in Israel and they protect that right. And of course we know what happens at Al-Aqsa. We've seen the border police and be pretty hard on individuals. The sadness.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vered. I want to share with you that I'm originally from Israel, obviously, and I lived a few years in Haifa. Haifa, known as a really coexistence city. I lived in the Shchunat Kababim, which is basically on the Carmel, on the mountains. It's an Arabic village. Literally, the mosque was just next to me, and we just lived together. I also am very connected to the Rambam Hospital. I, a few years ago, established a charity, and this is the largest hospital in Haifa, and we had doctors, Arab, Muslims, Christians, from all the religions that you ever think of, all working together. And we had patients from Gaza coming to Rambam because they know that we're treating the patient and not just the disease. We saw it as a holistic point of view. So I wanted to share it with you. I'm very connected. Thank you so much.
I really thank you, Vered, for mentioning the hospital issue. you are exactly correct. There are about 50% of the people employed in hospitals, the health teams, are not Jews, okay? And so this is a place of coexistence because the teams are working together 24/7. And unfortunately, we had some Jews extremists in Israel that after October 7th started writing terrible, horrible racism things about how, don't trust your eye doctor because they're all terrorists or whatever, terrible, horrible things. And then we have an NGO in Israel called Tag Meir. They're trying to fight hate crimes. We have many hate crimes. It's called Tag Meir. Tag Meir. It's a variation of another word that the extremists are using to call the revenge action. So if some Arab was attacking a Jew, then many Jews will go out and do actions that they call Tag Mechir, which means like revenge action. So they will try to burn a church or a mosque or hit somebody in the street, or they'll be very violent. So this organization came to kind of give an opposition to that. And so every time there is a crime, hate crime, the representatives from this organization, Jews from different denominations, they go for solidarity visits for the person who, if it was like an Arab bus driver that Jews were harassing, they would go and visit and pay a visit and say how much they're sorry for this and be in solidarity with him or her. And then just in these last months, because of all the racism calls about Arabs working in the hospitals, there was a delegation giving flowers out to the people working in the hospitals, in each hospital in Israel. So we just, instead of all this racism, we'll give you flowers and say thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing for the human beings from all kinds. And so there are actions like that. You have to know that both sides exist. It's our choice what side we want to join. And there is a choice because there are people, very brave people, still active to condemn racism and work for peace. Say your name.
Yeah, Shalom. I'm Rachel from Kedem, a progressive community in Melbourne. Thank you so much, Rabbi Yael, for a very moving talk. I'm here because your friend Rabbi Dalia Shahan suggested that.
My colleague was here during services during high holidays, yeah.
Yeah. I've got 3 questions. One is, how do you personally cope with the vicarious trauma after hearing all the stories and being with people who've experienced the horrors? That's one question. And secondly, apart from praying and giving money, what can we do here? And the third question is, I can repeat them if you like. The third one
My brain is not going to remember it, but
yeah,
I'll try.
Is, are you able to recommend any reliable sources for us to keep up to date with more accurate information?
That's a good one. I have to think about it. Thank you, Rachel. So as to myself, I was working non-stop in the first month, just visiting all the people. And I did go to sleep with their stories in my head, and with the visions and pictures and the voices I heard. And waking up with this in the morning with the worry for the hostages. I all the time think, every time I eat, I think about maybe they don't have, also the people in Gaza that are starving. So it becomes even hard to eat without thinking of all the people who have nothing to eat or place to sleep. Whenever, we had winter before I come here. And so whenever it was really cold and rainy, you would think of all the people that are out of their houses right now. And so it didn't allow me just even a minute to be away from that. And many of the people who became sick because it's winter, I kind of held on and kept on going all these months. And then just a week before coming here, I got completely sick. I was 3 days in bed, I couldn't move. And I felt this is how my body is reacting to all the stress that I held, all these months I was working non-stop. I do get a lot of support from my colleagues and from the Israeli Reform movement. It's not a word for one rabbi, so we cooperate, and I have rabbis in the north that are also helping my communities that are now evacuated to the north. Daria was doing services with me. The picture I told you, she was there with me. And so a lot of rabbis, we work together to give consultant to our community members. So it's all mixed. It's not like you're working just with your community now. Everybody's working with everybody. That's all. And you know what? But the thing that gives me most comfort and strength is to again reconnect to those groups that I'm active personally with, that are having all these really hard conversations. How can we keep on going with our struggles for peace and hope? And people are encouraging each other. Some people are despaired and they say, you know what, I can't believe in this anymore. What are we doing? And we're not successful and all of that. And then the other people would be trying to bring it up and say, no, let's not despair. We have to continue working. We have to continue raising our voice and talking and protesting. And even if it's dangerous, we go out and we protest. And that gives me a lot of strength to, just to not give up. Because the minute you let go of you say, no, it's helpless. We're a helpless case, which I have moments I'm like a millimeter from there, okay? But then I can't continue living there, not believing. It's like, it's not a possibility because then despair is not an option right now. So that gives me a lot of strength. What was the second one? About?
What can we do here apart from praying and giving money?
Oh, what can you do? I don't know, but the information I shared with you today was to inspire you a little bit to be a part of the discourse you have here, and I know it's been a hard time for everybody here as well, and for Jews in particular, but I don't have the right to tell you what to do, but I do want to encourage you to speak up and to let people know that, that talking about all the Jews are thinking that and that, or all the Christians are like that, or all the Muslims are like that, is not legitimate. And to understand that there are different voices in our societies, and not all Muslims are Hamas people. No, they're not. Okay? And it's not moral to say that, because you're talking about millions of people, and it's their lives that are to be determined, and then you're not allowed to say that they're all Hamas. This is like letting their blood, it's not okay? And so in the same way, it's not okay to say, yeah, we have leadership right now in Israel, which is doing a lot of damage to Israel, because it's a bad leadership. It's extremist, fundamental interpretation of what a Jewish state would be. They took the most extreme, unhuman interpretation of our tradition. We don't agree to that. So you speak up, tell people that not all Jews are like that, and that there are people who are struggling for better interpretations of our tradition, and that our tradition has all these humanitarian values, that we want our state to be led by that. And tell people that we're struggling, and if you can support the ones that are now opposition to the leadership that we have, that's a good thing. So I think that today, standing aside Israel means sometimes you need to criticize what Israel is doing, but out of love. Because I love my state, I grew up there, I raised my kids in Israel, I served the army. When I'm criticizing my government, it's not out of hate it's out of love to my state. But the way I see loving the state now is being an opposition, to what's happening. I don't want this war to go on forever, no, I don't. And my government right now is promising me nothing but more revenge and more war and more dead people on both sides, and I don't want to raise my kids in a place like that. So I need to be in opposition, and I need to be consistent. And so if you can find ways to support the opposition, I think you would be great Israel lovers for doing that. Okay? You're doing a favor to Israel to enforcing, to strengthen these voices and make sure people know there's more than one way that people think in Israel. We're not all the same.
And accurate,
And the last one?
accurate information.
Go into the websites of coexistence organizations. Read the things that the posts that people are. Coexistence organizations in Israel, I can give you, I can somehow provide a list of different organizations. You can go into the website and they always have English versions and just read the stuff. You know, even family members of people who were murdered. Yeah, so I was in many, many funerals. I heard all kinds of sayings in the funerals. And I can't judge people who are burying their dear ones that are in such pain. I'm sure that they were talking out of just being completely in grief, okay? But I did hear people saying, don't worry, Dad, when they're burying you, we'll revenge in your name. Okay? People saying things like that. I did hear that. But I did hear people, a person, for example, from one of the kibbutzim, both of his parents were murdered together. And even in the funeral, and all the months after, he was talking to the press and talking to Israelis and saying, no, I don't want revenge in their names. They were peace activists. Don't go and revenge on their names. I'm encouraging you, I'm begging you to stop this war and to promote peace. And so, see, these two voices, how do you, right, it's like, there's such a gap between them, but I do want to believe that most people in heart want peace, and it's just that they're so in pain now, and we need to move on from that stage. We need to move on to the day after and start planning it and start talking about our visions and our values, rather than just again and again talking about what happened. It is important to remember what happened, to acknowledge it. It's the most important thing in the world to bring the hostages back. But then we need, and then what? And then we need to talk about the future and how the land of Israel has to be a place for the Palestinians are not going to disappear. Israel's state is not going to disappear. They're both going to still be there, even after the war. And so, how do we want to manage our, the life together in the land? Can we share the air and the water and the land without killing each other for another 100 years? Okay, that's what I'm asking. Yeah. Last one?
Yeah.
You okay? No, last question? Oh. Okay.
Actually, if you really wanted to support the work of Rabbi Vurgan and the movement in Israel, the reason that Yael is here is to raise funds for the many programs that are supporting the issues that she's been talking about. And that fundraising is the reason that she's here.
Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you very much, Rabbi Yael. Thank you very much, Reverend Julie, for hosting us. I want to say, firstly, if you didn't ask any questions, Rabbi Yael, I believe, will be available in the hall, so please feel free to accost her in a nice way and ask her all the questions you like. From my perspective, I've heard stories from Israel for the last 5 months, but I don't think I've heard anyone say it in the way you've said it. Firstly, most of the stories I've heard are from Australians visiting rather than from people who live there, but also we mostly hear stories from the cities, not from the regions, and not particularly from the regions where this was most infiltrated. So I think that's something that's been extremely eye-opening to me, but you said it in such a beautiful, heartfelt way. I think the whole time you said it with a smile, which is amazing to hear the stories that you've told us with a smile. I can absolutely see why you're described as the happiest rabbi in the world, and I'm sure that will return at some point. So I want to thank you very much for being our guest, for speaking to us in such a beautiful, heartfelt way. As I said, I want to encourage everyone to please. Firstly, to go to lunch to enjoy the food, but also to speak to the rabbi if you like. I want to remind you that apart from lunch food that you'll see in the room, as Rabbi Yael mentioned, the festival of Purim is coming up next week, so we have some special Purim foods as well. Ham and tashen. If you see triangular little foods and you don't know what they are, that's festival of Purim. You can ask the Rabbi Yael or anyone else who might know what they are to explain them to you. And finally, or not. It's not always the nicest way. It's not necessarily for the nicest reason. But finally, again, thank you to everyone for being here. As you know, the Council of Christians and Jews does events regularly. We try to get guests who are visiting to give us enlightening information on topics that we might not know about. This is a prime example and a spectacular example of that. And we look forward to further events here and